Good morning, students. I am Dr. Sanjana Sharma. Students, I welcome you to the class of paper 6th. In our today's class, we are going to study a wonderful dramatic monologue by Robert Browning, and the title of this monologue is Porphyria'S Lover. Students, this is Browning's first dramatic monologue, printed along with Johannes Agricola in the Monthly Repository in 1836. Later on, the poem was published in Dramatic Lyrics in the year 1842. It describes a grim murder and is narrated by the abnormal lover of Porphyria after he has strangulated her. Students, in this dramatic monologue, Browning visualizes powerfully the subtle and complex mental states and processes and expresses them in a picturesquely lyrical form. Students, let us first go through the text that we are going to cover today. The rain set early in tonight. The sullen wind was soon awake. It tore the elm tops down for spite, and did its worst to vex the lake. I listened with heartfelt fit to break, when glided in Porphyria, straight she shut the cold out and the storm, and kneeled and made the cheerless grate blaze up, and all the cottage warm. Which done, she rose, and from her form withdrew the dripping cloak and shawl, and laid her soiled gloves by, untied her head, and let the damp hair fall. And, last, she sat down by my side and called me. When no voice replied, she put my arm about her waist, and made her smooth white shoulder bare, and all her yellow hair displaced, and, stooping, made my cheek lie there, and spread over all her yellow hair, murmuring how she loved me, she too weak for all her heart's endeavor to set its struggling passion free from pride, and vainer ties dissever, and give herself to me forever. But passion sometimes would prevail, nor could tonight's gay feast restrain a sudden thought of one so pale, for love of her, and all in vain, so she was come through wind and pain. So, students, on a stormy midnight, a man finds the woman he loves coming to him. He was never sure of her love for him. She comes in, shuts out the storm, kneels, and makes a pleasant blaze. The poem, students, was originally intended to appear in a series entitled Madhouse Cells. Students, now let us come to the textual analysis. The rain set early into night, the sullen wind was soon awake. It tore the elm tops down for spite, and did its worst to vex the lake. I listened with heart fit to break, when gilded in Porphyria, straight she shut the cold out and the storm, and kneeled and made the cheerless grate blaze up, and all the cottage warm. So, students, this dramatic monologue, the speaker is a lover who has an abnormal, if not insane, mind. He tells us the story of how he murdered his own mistress. The murder was committed during the night when the beloved Porphyria had just begun to enjoy the company, the love with her lover. So, as we see It was raining and a storm was blowing. The storm was doing a lot of damage to the topmost branches of the elm trees. And it is the lover student who is saying all these things. The rain began early that night. Soon the wind began to blow with indignant fury, as if it were awakened from its sleep by raindrops. The wind tore the tender branches at the top of the elm trees. It blew upon the surface of the water of the neighboring lake as wildly as it could, disturbing the same. And lover says, I listened to these and sat with heart fit to break, waiting for Porphyria. When gilded in Porphyria, straight she shut the cold out and the storm, and kneeled and made the cheerless grate blaze up and all the cottage warm. Which done, she rose and from her form withdrew the dripping cloak and shawl, and laid her soiled gloves by, untied her head and let the damp hair fall. And last she sat down by my side and called me. So here we see the lover relates that Porphyria entered in the room in which he was waiting with heart fit to break. Porphyria took her seat beside him. She made the room warmer with her presence. She broke the ice and invited her lover to have a chat with her. The same thing has been expressed by Porphyria'S lover in the following line when he says, at that intense moment, when I was waiting in the room, listening with the heart fit to break to the storm outside, Porphyria entered in the cottage gently, though swiftly enough. Immediately after she had entered, she shut the door behind her, and thus driving out the cold and the stormy wind. Kneeling down, she fanned the fire, which lay almost extinguished, into a blaze, making the cottage warm thereby. This done, she rose and removed her dripping cloak off, laid aside her soiled gloves, untied her hat, letting her soft, beautiful hair fall on his shoulders. When no voice replied, she put arm about her waist and made her smooth white shoulder bare, and all her yellow hair displaced, and stooping made my cheek lie there, and spread over all her yellow hair, murmuring how she loved me. She too weak for all her heart's endeavor to set its struggling passion free from pride and veneer ties dissever and give herself to me forever. So the beloved, kneeling down, fanned the fire which lay almost extinguished into a blaze, making the cottage warm thereby. And after this, she rose, removed her dripping cloak off, laid aside her soiled gloves, untied her hat, letting her soft, beautiful hair fall on her shoulders. And the lover says, then she sat beside me and started talking. And the lover is only sitting and gazing as if stunned by something. And he further says, but passion sometimes would prevail, nor could do night's gay feast restrain a sudden thought of one so pale, for love of her, and all in vain, so she was come through wind and rain. And students, the lover continues the account of the meeting, the last meeting with his beloved. pouring out of the beloved's heart continues. Though her courage would most often fail to effectively uphold the feeling of love against false social conventions and pride, yet passion sometimes would take the upper hand, as it did this fatal night when, amid the attraction of a sumptuous feast, the thought of one pining for her love suddenly entered her mind, which, after all, loved him sincerely, and she at once set out in wind and rain to see him. But sometimes the feeling of love would defeat those of pride and social vanity, as it did that night, when, amid the extremely attractive surroundings of a gay feast, thought of her lover, who was in vain pining for her love, suddenly entered her bosom, defying all restraints. The atmosphere itself suits for all such daring, revolutionary, and abnormal actions. Outside, everything is upset, turbulent, and furious. Sullen wind is bent upon breaking all the barriers which come its way. Such background prepares a unique atmosphere for such doings. The lovers' hearts are also disturbed, furious, and determined, just like the fury of the stormy wind. Their love also crosses all obstacles, and they meet forever in spite of everything. Students, here I would like to mention that Browning has always been praised for his deep and thorough understanding of human nature. As his dramatic monologues have proved that he is a great poet, psychologist as Shakespeare. It is a well-known law of psychology that contrast always attract the attention of the individual. By association, we are reminded of something just opposite of what we perceive at a particular moment. So, here we have seen today that on a stormy night, a man finds her beloved coming to him. He was never sure of her love for him. She comes in, shuts out the storm, kneels and makes a pleasant blaze. He knows at last her love, and he is in ecstasy. For fear of losing this treasure, he would like to kill her that very moment. So he strangles her with her own hair. The lover says that God watched them and yet has not said a word. So, students, the lover kills in order to preserve the nobler and purer self in that state of devoted love. We will continue with this amazing poem in our next class. This much for today. Thank you very much.